Every semester I tell my community college students about the worst advice you could ever give someone, and that's follow your dreams. Now, follow your dreams used to work years ago, but in today's economy, it just doesn't cut it anymore, and let me explain why. First, a quick economics lecture. What I'm going to do is draw a timeline here. It's 2012 right now. Another hash mark. Let's make this 1980, and let's make this 1950. Back in post-World War II America, we had what was called a diamond-shaped economy. A diamond-shaped economy means that there's very little lower class, there's a broad middle class, and not that many rich people. Well, as our society progressed, especially in the 70s, businesses started getting smart, and they realized that they could make some more money by shipping jobs overseas and automating everything with technology and machines. So starting in the late 70s and 80s, all of our middle-class jobs started going away because, again, automation and overseas manufacturing. And as more and more of these jobs kept going away, our economy today kind of looks arguably something like this, where there's a very broad lower class and kind of looks like a thumbtack of sorts. And the middle class keeps shrinking and shrinking. And what we have now is a very broad lower class service sector down here. And if you look at the upper class, we got a little bit here, it growing over here, and then gets even bigger over there. There's a lot of reasons why that's happened, too many to discuss right now. One being income taxes back here used to be 90% for the wealthy, and up here you hear statistics that's about 15% now. But I'm not here to talk about the upper class. I'm here to talk about where my students are, which is mainly down in this area. Another way to think about this is thinking about it in terms of goods, products, and services. And the analogy I like using is the pizza analogy. So, back in the day, we were a goods-based economy. We would buy flour, we would buy milk, and we'd buy all the ingredients necessary to make a pizza, for example. Well, as our manufacturing base became more prolific post-World War II, we became very product-oriented. I know pizza's not necessarily a product, but it works for this analogy. We would now buy the whole entire pizza and throw it in the oven, and we wouldn't buy the constituent goods anymore. As our manufacturing started shrinking and the middle class started getting smaller, we became a service economy. Now we'll actually pay someone to deliver the whole pizza to us because we're too lazy to even throw it in the oven ourselves or buy the goods to actually manufacture it ourselves. So we've gone from a goods to products to arguably a service-based economy, and that is what this lower class is primarily consisting of. Service sector jobs such as retail, fast food, etc., etc., etc. And what's happening right now is a lot of my students, they're stuck in what they would call a dead-end job. Which makes sense. If they are at a service sector job, there's no upward mobility because there are so few middle-class jobs available and there's so much competition for them. And what you see often is students going from one job to another, to another, to another. Statistics have shown that by the time a student's 25, they've jumped around careers multiple times already. And they keep jumping around on the bottom here because there are so few jobs up here that they can apply for. So the question becomes, what are students supposed to do? Back in the diamond-shaped economy, there was the ladder analogy. You can climb the corporate ladder, and that made sense. You could follow your dream, pick any job at the bottom, and you could easily work your way right on up the ladder and stay with the same job for years and years and years on end because there was upward mobility in a lot of different jobs. In today's economy, that's not the case. You get a job, the service sector, and again, there's no upward mobility. So the question becomes, what is a student supposed to do in today's economy? And there's a couple suggestions that have worked for students, and let me go over just a few. First, it's important to understand the difference between what I would call a I-shaped person versus a T-shaped person. So an I-shaped person has incredible depth in one particular knowledge set or skill. So they're good at really one thing. And that works really great in a diamond-shaped economy. You start at the bottom, you do one thing, you get really good at that one thing, and work your way up the corporate ladder. Arguably, in today's economy, everyone needs to be a T-shaped person. And a T-shaped person has incredible depth in a particular area, but the top of the T represents the breadth of skills that they also have. They have to do a lot of different things at their job because it's so competitive in the middle. Employers are looking for people with a very broad skill set. And when I say a broad skill set, I mean literally a very broad skill set. For example, let me make a little more room right here. A lot of my students are art majors or design majors, and they are interested in pursuing a more creative career path. And let's say they have a job opportunity here in the middle, and someone wants them to do web design, but they also want someone to run their Facebook page, which is becoming more and more common. Perhaps they want someone that can do graphic design because, these things are all related as well. YouTube's becoming more popular, so they want someone with video editing skills. Of course, if they have a website, they have to be familiar with search engine optimization. And the list kind of goes on and on and on. If they have any products, they need to be familiar with photography. Video and photography requires knowledge of lighting. Of course, if they're putting together PR packages, they have to be good at writing. Newsletters require the use of InDesign. Of course, there's the standard Photoshop for photo manipulation, Illustrator, and frankly, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So the question becomes, how the hell is a student supposed to acquire all these skills, especially when they have to fulfill their GE requirements during school? Budget cuts have made these creative classes less available at schools because, let's be honest, as soon as there's a budget cut, these creative classes are usually the first ones to go. So what is a student supposed to do? And what I try to emphasize to my students is that there is actually a very good education system in the country. If we were to draw a Venn diagram of sorts, we could say that we have a really good education system and that they should take advantage of it. What I also tell my students is, even though our country has a great education system, we don't exactly have a great school system. And the distinction should be obvious that sometimes in school, you don't exactly learn stuff, and there's a great education system we have in our society where students can get socialized from friends, families, media, life experiences, jobs, etc., etc., etc. There are lots of opportunities outside of the traditional school setting to become educated. So I try to emphasize to my students it's more important than ever to really take advantage of all the free time they have outside of school. Because, as Thomas Friedman said in the New York Times, average is over. Being educated just in school may not be enough in today's economy. Students have to have more and more skills, and let's be perfectly honest, schools just don't have the capability of educating students as far as all the skills they need to know because, frankly, there's just not enough time in the day. And with budget cuts, classes are being cut, and there's less class offerings as far as these electives and more creative classes, especially for my art and design students. So the advice I give my students is actually contrary to what a lot of people say about staying at a job forever. That used to work in a diamond-shaped economy. You stay with one job. work your way up, no big problem. But in today's economy, where they need a vast number of skills, it actually is good to jump from career to career to career to career to career to career. I always tell my students, get a job, figure out what skills you can learn from that job, learn them as quickly as you can, and within 6 months to a year, jump to a different job, and then jump to a different one, and then a different one. Each time you look for a job, try to find a job where you can actually learn some more skills. And as you accumulate enough skills, eventually there will be a job opening up in the middle, and the prospective employer will ask, hey, can you do this? And if you've already learned that in school, you can say, yep, and they might want you to be able to build a website. You can say that you learned that in your second job. They might want you to have some management techniques or management skills. You can say perhaps that you worked at Nordstrom's one year and you managed a group of salespeople. And so it's actually really important to jump around at the bottom of this economy to gain as many skills as necessary to work your way up the hourglass economy. Arguably, it's no longer an hourglass. It's more like a thumbtack economy. And in the end, this is increasingly important for students. Average student debt right now is going to be about $25,000 per student. About 50% of students these days, once they graduate, are either underemployed, so they're having one of these service sector jobs, or they're unemployed. So only half of our graduates are making it up here from the get-go. The other half are down here somewhere. And that's it. If any of you have some ideas about other strategies for students to use, please leave some comments below. Thank you very much.